believe it's the end of the world. I don't believe it's the end of mankind.
Today's the day that my life changes forever. I dropped out of college and decided that I wanted to honor my family tradition by enlisting in the Army. Although my mother and her friends aren't exactly thrilled, my father is proud of me. I think the most excited of them all in the family would be my kid brother. All he can talk about is me going off to foreign countries, killing the commies, firing guns and flying in helicopters, and sleeping with the exotic women there, much to my mother's dismay. You see, there's this little conflict going on in the Asian Pacific in a country called Vietnam. The news says that these guys have been fighting against the French since the 50s, and now the country is split between North and South since the French left. And seeing as the French have left, China and Russia have gotten involved. Apparently the North was ran by those communists. I wanted to do my part to help those poor people of Vietnam and to chase out those commie bastards. I'll be leaving in 3 days to head out to base camp for training. I'll probably ride in this thing one more time before I head off. When I get out of training, I'll probably ride in it again. January 5th, 1964. It's my last night sleeping in my own room. Today I went out and hung out with my friends, Howell, Harold, and my girl Susan. Me and the boys drove around town looking at comic books before grabbing something to eat at the Burger Shake Shack. After that I drove over to Susan's house. Me and her have been dating since sophomore year. She has the most beautiful eyes, smile, hair, and, well, body. We talked about the future of our relationship, with me going off to fight in the war. We decided that even though I'll be away, we'll maintain our relationship as long as I write to her. After that, we had a little private time. Before I left our post-coital snuggle, she gave me a photo of herself so I don't get lonely across the ocean. I love that girl. When I got home, my family threw me a big going-away party. My aunts and uncles came over along with my grandparents. My granddad gave me his shotgun that he used in World War I as my going-away present. My father and uncles laughed while my mother nearly fainted. We ate steak and baked potatoes and watched a little bit of TV, and after everyone left, me and my kid brother went out back to throw the old pigskin. We didn't really talk, we just enjoyed our company. Well, I better get some sleep. The bus arrives tomorrow at 6:30 a.m. sharp, and I have everything packed and ready. March 20th, 1964. My training is over. In fact, I finished it at the beginning of March. Now usually I'd find this pretty odd, but I was already in shape, and I guess the US really needs men over there pronto. I'm currently on a plane heading straight to Saigon. That's the capital of South Vietnam. That's what the boys back at base told me, at least. They also told me that the heat there is unimaginable, and they said it was like picking corn down in Charleston, South Carolina. They also told me that if the heat doesn't get you, it'll either be the wildlife or the traps set up by the gooks. I asked them what a gook was, and they told me it was them people down there in Vietnam. I remember my sergeant calling them Viet Cong, but never gooks. Oh well. Looking out my window, I can see the ocean. It's so big and vast, covered in sparkles. The sparkles reminds me of the necklace I gave to Susan at prom on senior year. I knew that the world was big and vast, but I never imagined I'd see it like this. March 21st, 1964. After my plane landed, I was greeted outside by a man and several other soldiers. He came up to me and introduced himself as Captain Nathan. He walked me down the strip congratulating me on my decision to enlist to fight for my country. He then told me that he worked with a special operations team that were specifically tasked with finding, quote, objects of interest, end quote. I asked what kind of objects, but he just continued. After explaining to me their mission, he asked me if I wanted to join his group. I didn't want to respect a higher-up, so I agreed. He shook my hand and welcomed me to his group called Malice in Wonderland. I got loaded up into a back of an M35 truck along with 5 other soldiers. There was Doc. He was around 35 and was the medical expert. He joined the group back in 1962. Jackal, the weapons expert. Simon, the bookworm. And Thing 1 and Thing 2. Thing 1 and Thing 2 were twins, and they were also known for their wild sides. We drove about 4 hours before stopping at a camp roughly 500 miles out of Saigon. When we got out, Captain Nathan stopped me. He wanted me to meet the man behind the project. I walked to the tent and I met there two men. The first one was named Colonel Schooler. Schooler was a very tall and thin man. I didn't think he had much combat experience, but to my surprise he had been in Korea. Then there was the head honcho of the whole group, General Geed. Geed was a large, muscular unit of a man. He grabbed my hand with a crushing grip and nearly ripped my whole damn arm off shaking it. The two sat me down and passed me a small glass of Tennessee honey. While we drank, Geed explained throughout the years of man and civilization, treasures and objects have been lost or hidden away, and that it was our purpose to find them. I asked why, and Schooler jumped in, telling me that some of these objects hold great powers, or can grant powers to those who wield them. Objects like the Holy Grail, Ark of the Covenant, the Horn of Lucifer, the Fountain of Youth, and King Arthur's sword, and the objects that led them to Vietnam was the Malicious Head. All these things that they were telling me were like watching an episode of Twilight Zone. And then they told me that even though they were in charge of the group, they were actually employed by some higher-ups from the government. You see, apparently in World War II, that dang old Adolf Hitler and the Nazis had their own interest in the so-called relics and mythical objects. And when the US got wind of their ideas, we made our own little branch to hunt down these items to give us the advantage in war and in society. It was a lot to take in, and I'm surprised that I remember it all, seeing I was pissed drunk by the time they finished explaining things to me. Just then Nathan came in and told me that it was time to shack up. I don't know what I have gotten myself into, but it does sound interesting. May 23rd, 1964. I spent all day yesterday getting to know my fellow crewmates. First, I talked to Doc. Doc had been with these guys since 1962, as I obviously mentioned before. Apparently, Malice in Wonderland has been founded since the Korean War. He also told me that this isn't even the first group. Doc said that the first group went defunct after a botched mission in Sweden back in 1947. Before I could ask more about this group, he changed the subject to who I was. I told him who I was and where I was from. Doc told me that he was from Arizona. After talking to Doc, I went to go see Jackal. Jackal was from Colorado, and his fascination of weapons began when his uncle took him to a surplus weapon store. Jackal probably tell you what every gun is and which one is the best. Then I met Simon back in the sleeping tent. He was reading Fahrenheit 451, the book about a society where they burn books. Simon was more reserved, but he got to be pretty talkative later on. He was from Connecticut, and he went to college until his parents signed him up for the services without his knowledge. The only reason why he's still here is because of his interest of the unknown and paranormal. I went to go see the Thing Twins, but they were off in the jungle on another one of their wild fits. According to Nathan, the twins are fairly new, second before me. Nathan also told me that the twins have some sort of mental issue or something. A bell rang out and we all headed to the mess hall, which was just another tent. Apparently Jackal and Simon also serve as the cooks. We had some weird slop that had a slight taste of corn. Schooler and Geed got up and informed us that on the 25th we'd be heading out to find the Malicious Head. While the rest of the team brushed it off, Simon looked like he just had a girl give him the best time of his life. Schooler said that he had already radioed for 2 helicopters to come over and fly us out to the drop-off point. We'll be flying the DAC-2, however they pronounce it, going northwest. Honestly, I'm excited, but I'm also cautious. Apparently, there's been a lot of action over there between the southern and northern forces. Geed assured us that we'll be well weaponized before we go. March 25th. I'm currently in a helicopter flying over the damn jungle. The mountains remind me of the Appalachian Mountains, and they got me thinking about my girl. I remember that one time when we went up to the trip and we walked through the woods. I sent over a letter before I left, telling her how much I missed her and what I've been up to, and she sent one back telling me how much she misses me and how she has plans for us when I return. Apparently, we'll be going to the beach for a week, just me and her. Needless to say, that really excited me. When we were flying over Anlock, we almost got involved in a combat zone. I heard lots of gunfire, but I couldn't see a damn thing due to the brush. Well, the helicopter's supposed to be landing in about 10 minutes and I gotta get ready. Hopefully we don't encounter anything undesirable there. March 30th. It's been a long 5 days. Well, to start off with, we nearly lost Jackal to a 2-step Charlie. Basically, a 2-step Charlie is when a bamboo viper is nailed onto a door, a wall, tree, and is used for a trap. Anything that passes by it attacks. I'd attack something too if I were nailed up to something. Well, they call them 2-step Charlies because after being bit by them, you'll die after taking about 2 steps. After that, we nearly got mowed down by a group of soldiers who mistook us as Viet Cong. The soldiers asked what the hell we were doing out here, and Geed demanded to speak to the leader of their group. Geed and one guy went into the brush to talk. Afterwards, that man came looking out pretty pale. He ordered his men to leave immediately. On the 26th, we got stuck in the rain. It poured for hours and hours, and I honestly thought we were going to drown just by breathing. And then finally it stopped at around 3 p.m. While we were marching, the twins were walking and one of them slipped in the mud. Jackal laughed, which is a reasonable response, but the twins got up and began beating the shit out of Jackal. I had never seen men fight like that before. They just fought like dogs, swinging and thrashing around. Schooler and Doc separated them, but Geed pulled out his gun, threatening to shoot them both if they pulled that shit again. Needless to say, we were all tense for a while. On the 29th, we found a foxhole, and I heard stories of Viet Cong making vast tunnel systems where they house people, sneak weapons, supplies, and information to other areas. Schooler and Geed agreed that the twins should go in. While we waited for the twins to clear out the tunnels, I asked Schooler what the Malicious Head was. He took me over to Geed, and that's when I learned two things. 1. The Malicious Head is some stone head somewhere in the jungle near a temple. About 1,000 years ago, a group of warriors entered the village looking for a medicine man. The villagers, however, don't welcome outsiders, and they try to chase them away. The warriors retaliated by killing 5 villagers. The medicine man and some of the village protectors retaliated by capturing 5 soldiers and killing them. They took their blood and poured it onto the stone head to grant them powers to kill the rest of the warriors. Apparently, if you sacrifice 5 people and put their blood on the stone, you'll be granted supernatural powers like invulnerability or super strength and whatnot. Now, I almost laughed at the absurdity of this, but then Geed lodged his arm between my neck, telling me if I'd ever disrespect the unknown again, I'd be the only casualty this group has. I don't know if this man is crazy or devoted, but I know there's just something not right with him. April 2nd, 1964. It's been hell. On the 31st, we almost got ambushed by a Viet Cong soldier. He was hiding out in a tree, but the branch must have gave way because he came crashing down onto the ground. Nearly took out Simon. Jackal and Doc were ready to kill the fool until Schooler stopped them. Schooler explained that there has to be a reason why this one guy is out here in the jungle. Simon asked Schooler how does he know if there's just one of them out here, and Schooler replied that if there were some more of them out there, we'd all be dead by now. Geed grabbed the lone soldier by the gruff of his neck and asked him if he knew about the Malicious Head. The guy tried to play dumb, but he talked once Schooler threatened to throw him to the twins. Apparently, the area is about 100 miles from us. Geed slammed the gook onto the ground, and Schooler asked what we should do with him. Geed looked at the guy and told him he ain't worth it. So we decided to walk about 50 miles, make camp, and then continue the rest of the 50 miles. On the 1st, we had to sit at camp since it began to torrential rain again. We all knew that we went out in the rain, we'd either sink or get lost. Geed was extremely irritable for that day. He would yell and insult the other teammates and sometimes hit them. I'd never seen him act like that before. I'm starting to believe that his obsession with the head is driving him crazy. Or maybe the head has some odd powers that are driving him mad. Today, Schooler came into my tent and asked for the others to leave for a minute. Schooler told me that he was thinking about calling off the mission. And leave, but can't if Geed is still in charge. He continued by stating that he fears that Geed is going to go off the deep end and might kill us. I wanted to laugh, but then the look in his eyes, pure terror. Now, I've seen fear in a man's eyes before, but this one was different. Schooler legitimately believed that all of our lives were in danger. Now, before he could continue, Captain Nathan and Geed came in. Geed informed us that Schooler was going to be demoted and Nathan would be colonel from now on. Schooler became enraged and demanded on what ground does this have cause for. Geed said unwillingness to follow orders. Schooler looked at Nathan and Nathan stared back. At least, I thought it was Nathan. He looked pale and off. Schooler stormed out of the tent and Geed followed. Nathan turned and followed as well. April 3rd, 1964. It's currently 2:42 a.m. Usually I'd be dead asleep, but I can hear screaming out in the woods. Screaming in the woods would immediately call for us to get up and go look around, but since we're in the deep jungles of Vietnam, it could be a trap. And none of us are willing to get up and go out to get shot. I can only pray that the screaming stops soon. April 3rd, 1964. We spent the entire day looking for Schooler. We woke up and he just wasn't there. I'm assuming the screams that we heard were from him. We spread out into the jungle to look for him. While we were looking, Doc pulled me aside and he asked me if anything seemed off about this search. And I told him no, but he pointed out that neither Nathan or Geed were out here looking for Schooler. Jackal walked by and asked us what we were doing, and Doc asked him the same thing, and Jackal agreed that it was weird that Geed and Nathan weren't out here looking with us. We continued to look for Schooler until we found his dog tags and some blood. The twins caught up with us and said they'd found his shirt, too. We'd all agreed that there was some sort of foul play. Doc and Jackal turned to each other and nodded. They were going to go question Nathan and Geed about this, and I'm hoping it doesn't end terribly, but they have a point. Geed is acting strange and really aggressive towards us, and then Schooler has doubts about the mission, and Geed demotes Schooler, and Schooler goes missing. Everything just seems so wrong. I'm beginning to regret joining this team, and so are the others. April 20th, 1964. I'm going home in a week. After everything I've been through and seen, I'll be going home. At least that's what the G-men have told me. Now, I don't know where to begin, but I suppose to start where I left off. Well, on the 3rd in the afternoon, we returned back to base camp, and the twins and Simon held on to the evidence while Doc and Jackal went to Geed's tent. And at first, everything was calm until we heard shouting and yelling. Then we heard thuds and we knew we had to go in. Doc was slamming his fists onto Geed and Jackal was holding Nathan from hitting Doc. The twins of all people diffused the situation. Jackal and Doc stormed out as Simon and I stood back. The twins had Geed restrained, preventing him from going anywhere. Geed asked if this was a mutiny, demanded to know what was going on, and Doc went out to the radio and called for 2 helicopters to come pick him up at a clearing roughly 20 minutes away from the camp. The twins came out hauling Geed and Nathan. We decided to take only our clothes, food, and radio and some weapons instead of packing up the whole camp. And as we were walking, we got ambushed by some Viet Cong. They came from all over, firing from the trees and bushes. And I remember Simon being the first to go down. He got shot in the side of the stomach and collarbone. And he tried to get to cover, but a damn gook got to him first, bayoneting him multiple times before spitting on him. Doc saw this and unloaded half a clip into that damn bastard. The twins dropped Nathan and Geed to the ground, leaving them for the Viet Cong. Jackal grabbed Simon's gun and ammo before shooting down 3 gooks. Doc was trying to clear a path while the twins engaged into hand-to-hand combat. I tried to follow Doc until I felt cold steel on my neck. Now, at first I believed it was just some gook trying to get a one-up on me, but it was Captain Nathan. That son of a bitch went AWOL. And he was ready to take me and the rest of us out so he and Geed could get what they wanted. But before he could cut me, Doc turned around and put a bullet in Nathan's dome. I remember hearing a loud pop and the splat of the skull breaking apart and gray matter coating the side of my head. I shoved Nathan's body aside before joining Doc and clearing a path. I could see past 10 or so trees of the opening. Doc lit up a smoke signal and tossed it out before running back to grab Jackal. I turned around to see the twins being brutalized, their bodies being stabbed and beaten. Now, I know they couldn't feel pain, since the dead can't feel at all, but something in my heart felt for them. I could metaphorically feel every beat and stab their bodies went through. Doc came running back out with Jackal. Doc said that Jackal had been shot up pretty bad, but Doc said that we weren't going to leave no living man behind. And as we ran into the clearing, a squad of gooks intercepted us, preventing us from going any further. and I honestly thought we would be dead until a hellfire of sear and hot lead rained down onto him, shredding them. One helicopter flew over fire and down into the jungle, nailing several Viet Cong. Me, Doc, and Jackal ran to the other helicopter, boarding it just before it could take off. As we sat there, we could see the Viet Cong turn and tail and run away. The co-pilot turned to us and said that we had some balls calling it this close for a transport. He went to go say something else, but that's when the helicopter was struck by something. All I heard was a loud explosion, yelling, and fire. I saw Doc holding on to Jackal, but it didn't matter. The helicopter went into a downward spiral, flinging Jackal out into the ground. As we got closer to the jungle floor, Doc grabbed me, and both of us jumped out of the helicopter before it slammed into the trees, exploding. We landed on some vines and then landed in a river. Everything between then and until we got out the river was hazy. I knew that I struggled to catch my breath and swim, and Doc was trying to get some footing to grab me, but he just couldn't. And everything went black after I went under the water. Thought I was dead until I woke up on a sandbar. I collected myself and tried to focus on my situation. I went to go find Doc, but I didn't have to look too far. Found him on some rocks, and I tried to give him CPR, but it just didn't work. He'd done drowned trying to save me and get me to shore. At least that's what I choose to believe. The sun was setting, and I decided I didn't want to stay in the same area. So I walked straight into the jungle. I walked for hours until I saw a light in the dark. I quickly ducked down and tried to get a better look. I saw what looked to be ruins to a temple. The area was lit with torches, and I could hear something. I decided to take my chances and get closer. The closer I got, I could hear voices, and thought I'd been found, but the voices were coming from nowhere. And I got my guns ready as I approached the temple. As I walked, I heard footsteps in the distance. I made a mad dash to go hide in the temple, and the deeper I went in, the louder the voices got. They told me to kill, to take power and do horrible things. And I saw a door. I thought it was an exit, and I opened it, and then the voices stopped. And when I walked past the door, I saw it. The head. It had to be it. As I stared at it, something grabbed me from behind. I managed to free myself, and I saw that it was Geed. I was shocked. I had honestly thought that the Viet Cong had taken care of him, but to my dismay, he was very much alive and very much pissed. He was bloodied and scarred. Geed congratulated me on making it this far, but my time was up. I asked him why. Why would he betray his own men, his own country? And he responded in an inhuman voice.
It's simple. Why the heads of yours flowed sacrifices of blood. This is how for us blood brings power.
I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Geed was no longer a human. He was a thing, a monster. I went to fire at him, but he already had my gun. I knew that shooting him was out of the question. So I pounced onto him, swinging my fists, and he fought back, slamming his arms and fists into my stomach and chest. I tried to grab my gun off of him, but he knocked me back, flying me towards the head. My body slammed against the head, falling onto my hands and knees, and I surely thought, this is it. This is where I would meet my death at the hands of Geed until a gunshot rang out. Geed stopped in his tracks and looked down at his chest. A single red hole in the center of his chest began to ooze blood. Before he could even react, several more gunshots rang out. Several more holes appeared on Geed's chest, and one in the center of his forehead. Geed fell onto his knees. Behind him stood Schooler. A bloodied, bruised, battered Schooler. Schooler walked up to me and grabbed me, pulling me up off the ground, and I couldn't believe my eyes. I thought he was dead, but before I could even finish, he hushed me. And he said that although Geed and Nathan brutalized him, you can't kill an angel that easy. I didn't know what he meant, but then he turned away and began to walk out. I grabbed his shoulder, demanding to know what he meant. How did he find this place? How did he survive? He turned and put a hand on my shoulder, and a bright, blinding light enveloped us. And he told me that in the coming decades, the heavens would wage war against man and their hubris. He told me that a few would survive, and that for my pure and courageous heart, I would be spared. After that, the light grew more intense, and I woke up there in the hospital. I was disoriented for a few minutes, but a wave of calmness and peace washed over me. 3 men in suits stopped by my bed and asked me questions like, who was I? What were the names of my mates? And what we were looking for, and who was our commander? And after I answered them, they thanked me for my cooperation and told me I'd be going home soon. And because I've heard stories of G-men and their shadiness, I've decided to mail this journal to my brother. If I don't come home in the next coming weeks or months, assume that I am dead. To my mother, I thank you for raising me and taking care of me. To my father, I want to thank you for making me the man I am today. And to my kid brother, you were always so happy and bright even during the darkest of days. And I'm glad you looked up to me, and I hope you grow up to be a better man than I am. Although you probably won't believe everything that I have written, just know that there are things larger than us in this world, and there is indeed something brewing. My only regret is I probably won't be around to witness it and help bring up my kid brother. Godspeed.
Happy 2000!